Just to know you're here to stay. I walk with faith, not with fear. Every step I know you're near. Through the doubt, through the rain, you're the calm inside the flame. Even when the night is long, your light leads me on. So I walk.
Welcome, everyone, to the Walk with Faith podcast with Molly Faith and Angela Nibley. Hi, Angela.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Thank you for having me. This
You're
is so
so
fun.
welcome. I'm so glad you're back.
Me too.
Yeah. So, what have you been up to since the last time we had our conversation here? We chatted with everyone.
Yeah, a lot of things have been going on quietly for me. I've gone through some really big personal shifts just in my own choice to change my grid and my energy and I'm constantly in healing trauma mode and dismantling, facing my shadow issues and working to be better than I was before. My work is very much part of that, so it all goes hand in hand. Um, but also just pursuing teachers and work that will help me anchor even more into that. And so I released a lot of resistance and accomplished a lot of healing and have really worked on raising my frequency. And then I also had a death in my family, which has been intense and difficult and hard and weird, in part because I've had to be estranged from my family for 12 years now. And so when you know that you have to be estranged permanent, there are different reasons that estrangement can happen. Sometimes taking a break can be really healthy for a relationship, all kinds of relationships. People grow in different ways. Sometimes people cause harm in their ignorance and need some time out to really learn and change those behavioral patterns so that people can come back better. So not all estrangement has to be permanent, and it actually can be a tool for healing relationships, I believe. But sometimes some abuses are so intense and so egregious, and the people are completely unremorseful and want to continue the abuse. And when you're in a situation like that, when you know you could even forgive, some things are so egregious you just can't. You work to do the forgiveness for yourself. And that word forgiveness is super triggering. A lot of people have different meanings associated with it. I'm working on a piece about it, but I'm taking my time because I want to be really specific and deliberate because language is powerful and language can also be really confusing and convoluted. So a lot of people will assign different definitions to the same word. And I think forgiveness is one of those words. I think abusers have kind of hijacked that word
Right.
to make us think that enabling is the same as forgiveness, and they are not the same thing. Forgiveness is letting go of the hold they have on you, and it is not always a final clear cut step. It can also be a process like the onion, releasing layers in and of itself. You can feel like you've forgiven someone and be triggered all over again and have to work through it again. It is not letting them off the hook. It is not bypassing their need to repattern their behavior to get back in your good graces, if that is ever even possible. Some things are so serious that even if they completely reform themselves, there's not a healthy way for that relationship to be repaired in this life. And that's, one of the hard truths we need to radically accept for healing so that we can make the choices that are in our best interests to be our best, healthiest selves. Sometimes things are very egregious, and also people can be truly repentant and actually go through the work to heal themselves and learn to be safe people on the other side of that. And after a long period of time of actively proving that and really showing that they have done the work, then a new relationship can be forged with an old person.
Right.
An old person from our history. That can happen too. But the actual act of forgiveness is choosing to not let them have power over you anymore.
Exactly.
And that is, you can do that and still call the cops on them.
Mhm.
You can do that and still file a lawsuit, And the other thing too that's really important to note, one thing that I've been contemplating and thinking on recently is sometimes the exact same behavior, the one act can be the exact right thing to do in one circumstance and the exact wrong thing to do in another. So sometimes calling the police is the right thing to do to keep the peace. And sometimes calling the police makes more drama and violence happen, and that's why we have to be so in tune with our own guidance to know, is this the right thing to do? Is this going to bring us more into alignment and towards peace? And sometimes we need to use
Right.
our power and our voice and our strength to make that happen. And sometimes we need to get a little more stoic about it and just let them do what they're going to do and be on our way and focus and let karma handle them. Sometimes filing a lawsuit will ruin your life because even if you win, it takes years and stress, and any settlement you get will never repay what even the lawsuit cost you in energy and life force and money. And
Right.
it can be absolutely the wrong thing. And sometimes you can be going about your life and have done, and it especially happens, I've noticed, if those are the right things to do, it's because you're in alignment. If you've done the forgiveness work, sometimes the universe will put the evidence right in your path that you need to go and file it and get a quick settlement, and they get their consequences and you're on your way. So all of those things are true. And sometimes it can even happen with the same person in the same circumstance, but it's, a 3-year window between when that would have been a harmful and toxic choice for them to make versus when it is the aligned choice to make.
Exactly.
So it's so important to stay in our alignment to make sure that we are checking in to do the right course of action moment by moment, because nuance is such a big part of all of this grayscale of reality. There are so many colors and textures, and we have to have our discernment on point in order to differentiate between this moment and that moment. And this could be the right thing here, and it could be the wrong thing to do here.
Mhm.
And so just learning that and going through the grieving process while having to be, my family is dangerous, and they function like a cult. It is a narcissistic system, and they behave like a culty hive when they're together. And they kind of lose rational sense in their groupthink and the bubble that they create. They parrot back the narrative that they want to be true, and they all believe it so much that makes them think that their abuse is righteous. And so when actually it is severe violation of another. And so it makes people dangerous when they get in that mindset. And my life, not just my safety, but my life is not safe when my family has access to me, unfortunately. And I didn't come to that conclusion lightly, because that's not something you want to believe, especially someone as trusting and open as I have been, and been shamed for being so naive and been taken advantage of in those ways. And at the same time, too many things happen where it's a miracle I'm alive all over yet again. And only when these people have access to me. Otherwise, life is boring in the most blissful way when they
Yeah,
don't, in the
exactly.
most wonderful way. So I couldn't go to the funeral. I couldn't be a part of that. It's been 12 years since I've last seen her. And our last interaction, actually, to bring that full circle, was that I had to call the police on her because my child had been intercepted at school, and they were wanting me to submit to their abuse ritual to break me down again before they would give me my child back. And I knew that was the wrong thing to do. Never mind that I'm an adult with my own life and things to do and places to go, and I need to get my child and go do what, I need
Right.
to do. But they wanted to have, one or two or three, I don't know what the plan exactly was, but it was several of them against me in their house with doing who knows what, and to break me down and submit me back into this system of covert enslavement, which they've accomplished, by destroying vehicles and sabotaging relationships with smear campaigns, all kinds of things like that. So my last interaction with my grandmother was having to call the police to keep the peace, so that they had a female officer go in and gently bring my child out to me, because they were not going to give me my child until I submitted to their abuse. And so that's difficult. At the same time, I do think there are people, sorry, I have a hair stuck to my lip gloss.
It's okay. Yeah.
There are people who transition in this life and have some darkness to process on the other side. And I don't think that's the case with my grandmother because I have had immediate communication from her and felt her presence and felt her support and her love. And
Oh, I just got goosebumps everywhere.
I also believe I've had an apology from her in having her see things differently, from my perspective more clearly and from a broader perspective. And she used to sing "You Are My Sunshine" to me, and that song keeps coming up all over the place. And I'll have in a room with still air, I'll suddenly have a feather come and like land on my lap while I just in my mind am seeing her face vividly and like feeling what it was like to be hugged by her out of the blue. That will happen. So I'm having several things like this happen to me all day, every day. And I I it's hard to reconcile, the finality of losing someone in that way in this life. And we've all been through it before. We know what that's like at a certain age, you don't avoid losing people, but that's difficult on one hand. And on the other end, I've known for several years that once she passed, we would be much closer because her ego would be gone and the need to
Yes.
the need to control. And
Yes.
I say she delivered love with an equal dose of sugar and arsenic because to her love is sugary. I love you, big hugs and kisses, and I'm going to tell you how wonderful you are in all of these ways. And just when I have you completely in the palm of my hand, I'm going to slice you open with the most cutting shame I can so that you are beholden to my opinion of you and so that you will behave in the ways that I deem the family needs you to. So, and a lot of people don't see that because they see the sweet, sugary side of her.
Right.
She's out there, just, I love everyone, I love everyone. And I do think that was actually a part of her. I think there was some masking to it in pretending to be that without pretending to be the darkness. She didn't integrate the two, but she still used her shadow very abusively behind closed doors. And a lot of people didn't see that side of her or perceive that of her because to them, she was just sugary, sweet Peggy. And so it was hard, she used to make an egg sandwich that she would call a Peg McMuffin. And so the night of her funeral, I made one of those for myself. And um, I, I, I have been going through my own rituals of grieving and connecting with her. And so it's an interesting process because death is weird and hard anyway. But when you're estranged, you start grieving their death. If you take it seriously and you know it's permanent, they really died to you the day you say goodbye because that's it, and there are several other people who have done things that are so serious. There's no coming back from what they've done. There's no way they can ever be a safe person to me. There's no way I can ever have a cup of coffee and wonder if, you know, it's over. It's over between us. So even though they could have decades more on this planet and they could outlive me, to me, I have to start grieving their death now because that's a very real consequence. You have to, if you take it responsibly, if you take it seriously, some people, can weaponize a stranger and be like, I'm just going to cut you and don't think about it or don't think about the last words they said, I take that very seriously, though. I think about consequences. I think about trajectories. I think about what's going to happen here and here and here and here when I make this choice. What are the ramifications that are going to unfold from that, the most likely probabilities? And so I had to realize, like, if these people died in an accident, if these people got an illness, if I never see them again, is this still the right choice? And the answer is yes, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And so that means you start grieving their death immediately. So that's what I've been going through. And
Wow.
it's,
Yeah.
part of the transformation, part of the growing. And there's also a lot of beauty in it too, a lot of tears, a lot of shadow work, a lot of going into my dark feelings and feeling them and loving myself through it and, shaking and lifting weights and doing what I need to do
Yeah.
to transmute that energy. But then on the other side of it, once you release that, there is a euphoria and a high when you get back in touch with, the lighter side of it and the higher side of it. And so it's a lot of highs and lows, but that's, what we're here in this transmutation experience doing.
May I ask you, Angela, what was the first time, or what can you remember about like a realization that you had to choose you because there was a lot of wounding there, right? Core wounds,
Mhm.
wounding, manipulation. What triggered you into finally choosing you, your protection, your self-love?
Um, it was an unfolding. It happened gradually because there are several people involved. And some of it was choosing me, but the bigger thing was following my guidance, because following my guidance was what took me there. It took more time for me to actually come to the place where I'm saying, I love me, this is in my best interest, so I'm choosing me. It was a process to give myself that permission to even get there, you know? But years earlier, I would recognize that one person was becoming incredibly toxic in my life and making everything worse and not wanting to be better. And boundaries were completely disregarded. No does not mean no to these people. And if it doesn't mean no on a small thing, then it doesn't mean no on a big thing. If you say, don't go in my purse, and they go in your purse, then you best believe they will violate you in any other way because they feel entitled to what is your boundary, what is an extension of you, and what is not their place. And when someone has that entitlement,
Yeah.
they are not safe. So it was just slowly unfolding, recognizing these patterns were so egregious and not fixed, and conversations would turn into word salad and Darvo and all of these abuse tactics. And this was before I understood what all of those really were. Um, it's probably been about 14 years that this really unfolded, where I had one friendship that I knew it was getting vile, and I had to end that relationship. And once I ended that relationship and cut all of the haze and clutter and distortions out of my energy, then suddenly I saw um, the other ones. So it kind of started in a domino effect of who is the loudest abuser right now. And so I cut one out and I'd be like, fine. And I didn't actually expect to cut more. But once they were gone, it became clear that someone else was also a significant problem. Like, oh, guess what? My marriage is very problematic and it's not going to get better because I've been asking for changes and therapy for 5 years now, and that's not happening. And then, of course, they were blindsided, and I wouldn't even go to therapy with them. That's the kind of
Yeah.
feedback and smear campaign that happened. Is like, no, no, actually, you proved that you don't care at all about my interests or my needs, or not abusing me.
Yeah.
And I had to choose my health. So then that cut out.
Of
And
course.
then 5 months later, it became clear that my mother was the loudest abuser in my world. And there was entrapment going on and engineered dependency. So I would be reliant on her, but also making me feel like a parasite. Um, we had been living in Florida when I was married, and my mother for 2 years was begging us to move back and bring my grandbabies back, come back and live with us. We have a big house. We want you here. You can stay here. You can get your feet on the ground. We want you back so much. We miss you. We want you home. And then as soon as you're away from, but we had our independence there. And as soon as you have that dependency, then you're treated like a parasite and you're treated like a pariah who's leeching them and who's a problem, who's always taking. And it's like, that's not what this was. You wanted me here. And now I don't have the stability I had now
Yeah.
that I'm leaning on you. And so then my ex left, and I was there with my mother, and we were going to therapy together. And she made me the promise in therapy that if I was in school, because I had to sign a student loan contract to go to school. So I said, if I sign, I was shamed for not going to school, but I was also, in hindsight, I recognized that I was sabotaged from going to school because that's a very important marker of people's self-esteem in my family. And they use degrees as a crutch for their identity and their self-worth. And that's not, it's great to accomplish things, but you need to know who you are without those things because
Absolutely.
those are matrix constructs and it doesn't define who you
Absolutely.
are. Yeah.
Exactly.
Having letters after your name doesn't um, fulfill you, and you will fall into toxic behavior if you think it will. So it just, escalates that narcissistic cycle where you think something outside of you needs to be what makes you whole. So there's nothing wrong inherently with it, and it can be a great thing and a great accomplishment. But anyway, I recognized that they were sabotaging that. So we were in therapy and seemed to be making progress. And I said, if I sign the student alone. I need the stability of a home because I couldn't get a job after my divorce. I couldn't buy diapers. I couldn't get a job interview because I had been working I had been a stay-at-home mom for several
Been
years.
there.
Yeah. So I couldn't even get a job interview at minimum wage jobs at this point, um, which was really disheartening and difficult. And I also didn't really have, they didn't know this in the job interviews, but I didn't in the job applications, but I didn't have real childcare or transportation. I was just trying to figure it out as I went and trying to get job interviews. And then I would see if I could find childcare and take the bus and whatever. And I mean, that's a whole thing in and of itself. But so she agreed. She's like, yeah, it's as long as you're in school, you can stay. We have this big house, you know. So sign the contract and then you'll be here. And it wasn't, 4 months later, she's saying, I think you need to spread your wings and fly. And I was like, I can't go anywhere but student housing. Like, that's okay. You can go there then. I'm like, well, then I'd lose my
Wow.
children. And there was just like no empathy. It's just, yeah, okay.
Wow.
And in hindsight, I realized that the point of that wasn't to get rid of me. It was to make me beg. It was to break me so that I would
Yeah.
be utterly dependent. She didn't want me to go. She wanted me to stay completely under her foot. And so I take people at their word and at face value. So I said, okay, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'll figure something out. And she didn't accept that. She expected me to beg. She thought, holding my children and our housing over me was going to be leverage. And the day I was leaving, she didn't know I was leaving, and she came home from work, and there was this box of um, really bad kitchen supplies that she and my aunt, because this is generational abuse. This filters down. So there was this box of kitchen equipment like rusty Dollar Tree frying pan and a ketchup dispenser and things that weren't really usable and definitely not things you could build a home with. Like it was not useful thing. It's not that I'm a snob about it, but this was deliberately designed to make me desperate and despondent. And so she brought home this thing to say, see, here's this care package of old stuff from your aunt's basement to help you get your start. And it was
Yeah.
supposed to make me super depressed so that I would then break down even more. And she got out of the car and saw my mattress being loaded into a truck. And she was just, her jaw dropped as she's holding this box going, and that told me everything too,
Yeah.
because she never thought I would leave. She never thought I could leave. She thought she had blocked every avenue to prevent that. So that kind of gaslighting, it's meant to make you mentally unstable because it's meant to rip you apart from your own guidance and your own sense of what is real and what isn't, so that you're completely under the control of the person who tells you what your reality is and then puppets you. And that is a hallmark trait of narcissistic abuse. And I talk about narcissistic abuse on my channel so much because I believe it is what the Matrix is founded on. I think it is the programming that so many of these structures are. I think pyramid schemes are part of that. And you can see that in things, like if you break it down to brass tacks, you can see that payday loan companies are a pyramid scheme, right? And the people at the bottom of that are the ones who carry the weight while the ones at the top get everything. That's how these
Yeah.
narcissistic systems are built. And it's built to break people down so that in their woundedness, they don't find their sovereignty and their power and their freedom.
Right.
Our trauma is supposed to be our prison. It's supposed to keep us trapped. And that's why healing trauma is a pivotal part of your spiritual evolution because it stays blocked. Your body keeps the score, and it stays blocked in your body, and the chakras aren't able to flow your life force efficiently to give you everything you need in health, in wealth, in relationships, in energy, in vitality. It's everything that you need comes within you and your connection to the
Exactly.
earth and the Most High. It's all connected. And so this system, this programming in this simulation is designed to block us and to be weapons against our own self, to be our own wardens by instilling programming that has us, just lost the word I was thinking, self-destruct, but self-sabotage,
Yeah. Yeah.
it's meant to block us from our own advancement. So that's why I talk about these things on my channel, because spirituality and hacking what is stopping us from being our best selves and the tricks and hacks that we can figure out to get there together are part of that, and just shining light and unpacking all of the hidden darkness that lets these things thrive. Because we're not saying this, I'm not saying this, but most of us, when we're coming from an objective of healing ourselves, in as within, so without, everyone else too, is we want to elevate everyone. We want to have us all do better. And
Yeah, of
so
course.
we can't do that by hiding the truth. We have to be honest about what is, and then
Yeah.
address it and fix it, because we can't fix what we don't acknowledge. If we have a basement full of rats, we can't go and pretend like this beautiful house is perfect. We have to go down and clean the root issue. We have to address it,
Absolutely.
have to take care of it. We have to clean it out. We have to dig it. We were talking earlier about the weeds.
Yeah.
You have to dig it out by the root.
By the root.
So we have to address these problems, and that doesn't mean it needs to take us out of alignment, because it's actually what is causing the misalignment. And so some people want to bypass and say, well, I'm just going to love and light my way through this. And that's great. There are some things that is the right way forward. Just like we were saying earlier, there are some things that are the right time and place and some things that aren't. There are some things you will make worse by focusing on them. So it's better to focus on the right thing and bring a higher outcome. But if something is already in your energy field, that you have manifested it, that it is part of your home or your job or your relationships or your life, sometimes those are weeds that need to actually be addressed. And that's what I love when Abraham Hicks says, you don't want to just put a smiley face sticker over your empty gas gauge and pretend like you suddenly have gas, because we smiled and loved and light our way through an empty gas tank. You need to address, oh, I have an empty gas tank. And part of living here in this existence and sifting through the 3D reality, the contrast here, is to be in the clay. Marie Antoinette, she used to do cosplay as a milkmaid. She had like a little peasant cottage built on the property, and she would literally go do cosplay as a milkmaid. We come here, she was the Queen of France. We come here to play with the clay. We come here to cosplay in these avatars. So pretending like we're going to ignore the contrast is actually not doing our part. But facing it and looking at the best parts of it help us transmute it. So you can go and dig weeds and make a dandelion salad out of that. You can make dandelion wine or tea or whatever.
Exactly.
It doesn't have to be a bad thing. You can reframe what you're doing in a way that is helpful. You can, instead of just ignoring and bypassing, you can face and radically accept what is, feel the feelings that come up, work up the emotional guidance scale as you need to, and then see that permaculture has this statement that goes, the problem is the solution. So recognize that whatever you're dealing with can actually be a solution. Whatever you're dealing with, even if it's uncomfortable and it's bringing your shadow to the surface, you can turn this into gold. How can I turn this problem into gold? How can I make this problem the solution to itself? Make this better. So that's why it's so important not to bypass. And also, we can stay positive authentically by looking at the bright side of it and also honoring our darkness and our feelings.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like I was saying earlier about that meme, the shadow hack. Is it okay if I drop an F-bomb?
Yeah, go for it. Go for it, Angela.
I made this meme. I made this meme and I haven't posted it yet because I've been waiting for the right moment, but it says, here's a shadow hack for you. Wish them swift healing, because you know how fucking painful that is. Because then you're honoring your shadow. Then you're honoring, this hurts me and what they did hurt me. And I'm not okay with that. And it's okay for me to not be okay with that. And I can wish you the swift healing I've had to do, which one is wishing for your best outcome, and two, wishing for you to go through the same painful process of it that I had to go through it, so you will learn your fucking lesson about it. There's two, I'll stop for there.
Yeah.
So you can honor it. You can honor it all. That's
Yeah,
integration. That is integration. And that's when we're making ourselves whole and we aren't fracturing our personalities through gaslighting and we're not fracturing our
absolutely.
personality through wearing masks of perfection. I'm so perfect. Look at me. I can't be imperfect because then I'll be punished and wrong. So I have to project and blame that onto a scapegoat
Absolutely.
so as to not take responsibility and never fix the problem in not taking responsibility. So that's kind of so much of what I focus on and so much of my expertise because it's my life experience and what I've had to figure out my healing through. And I'm really passionate about sharing that information with other people because it's such a prevalent problem. And a lot of people don't recognize it for the problem it is. And I also have a gift for making people seeing old things in new ways, old ideas in new ways. And I think when we look at old ideas from different vantage points, we can have new comprehension and recognition of what they really mean. And that can help us learn more about them and us in the process. So I'm really passionate about helping people heal their trauma so that we can all collectively be healthier and kinder and more
Yeah.
loving and safer to one another, and that we can all pursue our dreams and make all of our dreams come true as a
Yeah,
collective together as
exactly.
and build each other up. That's my passion and my life objective, basically.
Thank you, Angela. That's awesome. That's awesome. I love your meme. That's pretty, it's funny because I'm always praying for people to heal. Always. Um,
I'll post it and tag you.
please do.
Okay. I've
Swift
been,
healing
I knew I was
because
waiting. I was
yeah,
waiting for the right moment. Yeah.
swift healing because part of us doesn't even think about it that way because we really do. We want everyone to heal,
Hmm.
but that healing is painful.
It's expensive to your soul.
It is, and
Yeah.
especially swift healing. So, but it is for the highest and greatest good.
And I want that for them. I
Yeah,
want them to have their highest, greatest good. I want them to be their best selves. I want them to heal and be productively kind, loving members of whatever infrastructure and system they're a part of. And I want all their dreams to come true because they've done that work, which can only happen. Even if your dreams are handed to you on a platter, they won't feel like your dreams coming true for more than a minute if you don't do the shadow work. But if you
yeah,
do the shadow work, then you can build your dreams and then it actually feels like the fairy tale.
exactly.
Yeah.
It's your accomplishment from
And
everything you've done.
and you're living from within and you're not attached to the fairy tale. Like I
Exactly.
have really big dreams. I'm really ambitious. And at the same time, if God gave me a memo, a text message tonight that said, "Hey, just so you know, you're going to live in a tiny house in the woods for the rest of your
No,
life." I would be
stop.
I would be so
That's,
joyful with that.
I would love that.
Yeah, I would build a micro homestead. I would make a garden. I would go foraging, you know. I would
Oh
do so
gosh.
many things and I would try to get, an internet service so I could maybe do some anonymous like TikTok
Oh,
puppet
I would
theater
love
or
it. Yeah.
something,
Oh my gosh, how cool.
That's what I would do.
It
That's what
sounds
I
so
would,
peaceful
yeah,
and
right? I
amazing.
would not be sad with that. I don't need the biggest manifestation to unfold. And at the same time, I also think that's actually quite probable. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm not. I've had that intuitive inkling for a long time.
That's something
Um,
I had a vision of too, Angela. It was like, I just thought it's so funny that's coming through.
yeah.
I sat down with Ryan and I go, I may retire by the water, like a tiny, cute little cottage by the water so I can be by the ocean. But then part of me is like having this vision of just being in the woods somewhere where I'm like earthing and grounding and have my own vegetables and my herbs, and it's
Yes.
so peaceful. And I'm just like on my, oh my gosh.
That's heaven to me.
It
That's
is,
3D heaven to me.
oh,
Yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
That's like literally, it
We
sounds
should
like
build a
heaven.
tiny house commune together so we can be neighbors.
I know. Wouldn't that be
That would be
amazing?
fun. Yeah. That would
Yeah. Don't disturb at this moment. I'm in hermit.
yeah.
I'll be out soon when I'm divinely guided.
I'll talk to you next month.
Yeah. I'm in prayer and meditation,
Yeah.
rejuvenating my energy. I'll be out. Yeah. You'll see me
I'm
soon.
making tea from my garden. Yeah.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
And I feel like we would understand that the ones that are know how peaceful it is to be in hermit. And it's not that it's how do I explain this properly? It's just something that spiritual beings do to rejuvenate their energy, especially
Hmm.
very empathic individuals.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Make friends with trees.
Oh
I'm so
gosh.
attached to my plants.
Yes.
Like I love my plants like pets. I really do. I sing to them. I love them. And there are trees around where I walk and I hug them and I talk to them.
I
And
love it.
yeah, I talk to the snails. I told you before, like I've sat before when a snail was on its way and then it registered me and it like actually made a full turn to come in my
Yeah.
direction. I was like, hello, little snail, let's have a conversation.
Yeah. That's
The
awesome.
corvids, the ravens, the crows, I love them. They're my friends. Yeah.
I have them all here. I just took a video yesterday. They were all in the trees and they were just like, like all talking. And I'm like, what are you guys trying to say right now? I'm like, hi. I mean, they were everywhere. And I think it's so beautiful that you have that connection with all the beautiful animals. I can talk to caterpillars. I don't know if I could really, but they can, it's not like talking, it's like they can sense that energy.
Yeah.
I was like, we're gonna mow the lawn, buddy. I'm like, you might want to leave. Like, I don't want anything to happen to you. And he did. He turned and he started going down the stairs and was getting
Yeah.
out of the way. And I was like, oh my gosh, I can talk to you? Like, you can understand me. I don't know how it happened, but
Yes.
I literally was like, I don't want anything to happen to you. We are going to be mowing the lawn. You've got to
Yes.
go. And he did. He left.
I think it's because this is my hypothesis. I think we are our bodies, our matter are receivers, and we stream intelligence from consciousness. And consciousness, source energy. I just had a deja vu where like the room shifted. Consciousness, well,
Whoa.
that was intense. Consciousness is the intelligence. It is the data that we stream, just like, through our computer when we're streaming a show or whatever. So the information, and the more we release our trauma and open ourselves up, the more open our channel is, the more communication we can receive. And so that's why we can have contact with these other, entities, because they can receive that information too. And it doesn't mean that they necessarily have the same cognitive functioning that we do, but they can receive communication. They can receive that. I had a similar thing happen like last week. I was earthing on the ground. I was lying down on the ground, watching the sunrise. And I went in my bathroom and there was a slug on the floor, and I think it might have come on me. It was like, hijacking on my
Yeah. He's
my
like,
robe. And so my first reaction was to be like disgusted by it. I was repulsed by it. And then I recognized that it was a reflection of me that I was disgusted. That was my own disgust I was projecting onto it. Because for one, I'm friends with the snails, and slugs are just snails without,
Michelle.
the shell. And two, I put snail mucin serum on my face. So I was like, why am I getting all grossed out by this slug who's just a, snail without his shell? So I recognized that and I like transmuted the disgust about myself. I actually spent several, I was grateful to it because that was a lesson to me. I was like, oh, I need to work on shame, on another pocket of shame I haven't felt before. It just, opened another, because that wasn't the slugs issue, that was my issue that I was projecting onto it.
Yeah.
And I had a bay leaf in my bathroom
Yeah.
because of course I do, and I lifted it onto the bay leaf and put it in a cup and I took it outside, and when I put it out it kind of tumbled onto the soft soil a little bit aggressively, and it was like crouched up and really scared.
Oh, little
And so
baby.
I put my hand over it, and I'm not trained in Reiki, but I just put Reiki love onto it, and I
Right.
just like shot love to it, and I told it that it was safe now and it could be in the garden. And I also recognized, like, if I didn't help this slug, it was going to die. It was going to shrivel up in the house and just die. So I had to take it outside or else it was a goner. So I took it out and then I put Reiki on it. And then after like it like loosened up, and then it started reaching for my hand where the love was coming out. I was shooting like love through my hand, through my
Yeah. I know what you
radiating
mean.
my giving hand. And it was like reaching up for me to
It's
where
so
the love was
beautiful,
coming from, and then
Angela.
it went away. So that was a beautiful experience. It's interesting that it mirrored yours in a similar time frame,
That
because
is
we've
so
had a lot
beautiful.
of those echoes
Wow.
happening.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Gosh, that's amazing. Oh, that touches my heart. Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love that because we have so much. We have bunnies in our yard and all kinds of creatures. I mean, it's just full of them everywhere. And they all like to come into our house. And we're in Texas, it's
Mm.
summertime. So if I have the door open for like 1 second, then there's a little lizard that wants to come in,
Yeah.
and I'm like, buddy, I don't really want you in my
Yeah.
house. Like you're adorable,
Yeah.
but I don't want you, and they'll die if
Yeah.
they come in.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and we have the bird nest above, and then we have another bird nest now on the right-hand side. And they're what are those called? Nightingales. We have nightingales now.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah, so Brian's like, Mom, they keep me up all night until
Oh
I finally
no.
fall asleep because they're singing all night long. Sure.
I didn't know they sang at night.
That it's some bird. I want to think it's. I looked it up. The sound of a nightingale sounds just like them, but we have birds, and if it's not them, I could be wrong. But we have birds that about 11 p.m. at night
Hmm.
start just singing high pitch, and it's like chirp, 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 and like all these beautiful noises all through the night till about 5 a.m.
Oh wow.
Mhm. So. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. But they're out at night singing their beautiful song, singing to us, letting us know. That's what I feel like. And that's the message. It's like just singing to us. It's like, we're here, we're with you. And
Yeah.
we're so patient with them. It's not like we're like, get out of here. No, we're like, okay, you're going to be here with us. And we've learned to fall asleep to your beautiful music.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and same with the bunnies in the yard. We had that tiny little bunny, and I'm like, you're okay. You're safe, buddy. They're creatures from the Most High, from
Hmm.
Source. I love that you sent Reiki energy love, and he was reaching up
Yeah.
for your hand.
Yeah.
See,
It was stretching up with his, yeah, it was
he's like,
pretty cool.
thank you.
Yeah.
And he may not even be a he, but I'm getting a he.
Yeah.
Aw.
It was sweet. It was sweet. I was grateful for that experience, and it was grateful for what it showed me I needed to work on because, I'm so much better for having, cleaned that
Absolutely.
out and addressing this issue I didn't recognize I had yet.
Huge. Because this is it. We all have a piece of source flowing
Hmm.
through us. We are all God's creation,
Hmm.
right? And the slug was brought here in his form.
Hmm.
And it's not his fault that he was created that way. You're right. So looking within, what is it about that little creature that makes me feel disgusted
Hmm.
or angry or whatever it is or afraid?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Mirrored, reflected. Wow. It's awesome. Thank you, Angela, for that.
Yeah.
So, I know we were talking about um the narcissist, and then is there anything you want to finish off? I don't know why I'm going back to that, and my phone just lit up. Is there anything else you want to add to that to help people maybe see or help people heal with regards to if they're in a relationship like that, or if maybe they do have tendencies like that?
Hmm.
And they can work through them, get through it, or maybe they don't understand it or where to start.
Hmm. The first step is recognizing it and recognizing the patterns because the pattern recognition, it makes them extremely predictable once you see what's going on because they basically follow the same playbook time and time again. I'm also really careful. I sometimes use the word narcissist and I'm usually careful when I place it, but I usually say narcissistic abuser. And the reason for that is because any and everyone can be a narcissistic abuser. A narcissistic abuser is someone who uses these tactics. And when you are in a workplace, this is the programming hive mind in the matrix simulation that we're in. Um, there are even government organizations whose research indicate we are in a living simulation, and I believe it's one created by a creator for the purposes of education. It's a stage, it's a movie, it's a classroom,
It
it's a
is
video
the
game.
video game.
Playing it like a video game is such a life hack, man. It really makes it fun. But Narcissism is what we're here to, it is the programming. And that's why I talk about it, because it's so pervasive. And you don't have to have narcissistic personality disorder to be affected by it, because we all are. And we can all behave narcissistically. Also, there is a light side to narcissism. There is a light side to everything created. The light side of narcissism is that it's a developmental phase, but it's also a mode that we are in when we are in fight or flight survival mode. So if you're facing a saber-toothed tiger, narcissism is the gear your nervous system will put you into to make sure that you get out of that situation and focus on nothing else but getting out of that situation in that moment with no regard for the future. You're not thinking about next month. You're not thinking about anyone else except maybe your family and children, who in that state you perceive as extensions of yourself. So to the
Right.
degree that you save them, it's because you're seeing them as extensions of yourself. Some people have more wherewithal to have a little more altruism in that state and recognize that everyone is important while still being in that, hyperdrive. But that takes discipline and evolution to become into. So narcissism does have divine purpose. That is a great skill to have when you are in life or death situations. But when that gear gets jammed through trauma and you don't get out of that evolutionary stage, then you can't make decisions that are going to help you in the long run, because you are only thinking about yourself and your survival right here and now, and everything feels like a life or death emergency. So someone who walks in and says something who triggers you makes you feel attacked by that person,
Yeah.
and that feels like a life or death attack that you need to defend yourself to save. And that's how the narcissist thinks. They are, in some ways, in a sort of toddler state of emotional development, because they think everything is fight or flight. And that's also why nervous system regulation techniques don't work for them, because the second you need to be willing, when you face your shadow, you are facing your shame, your trauma, and your biggest fears. And if you are unwilling to face that, then any of the nervous system regulations techniques you do are going to cause you more panic in the long run. It might calm you down for a minute, and you can do some bypassing, and it's still a good thing to do. I recommend everyone do it anyway. But
Yeah.
when you get to that calmness of nervous system regulation, when you start to get regulated, what comes up in the calm is that shadow, because that is the weed that needs to be rooted.
Yeah.
And so it is the thing that is causing that perpetuation. And that's what's so wise about our systems and our divine psychology, is that it is a self-healing mechanism. If you let it be, it will bring up what most wants to be addressed. So when you get calm and you regulate your nervous system with breath work, with meditation, with all of these techniques that you can find so much good information about. I really like Awaken Breath Work, OWAKEN on YouTube. They have a great breathing exercise that is magic.
Awesome. I'm gonna write that down.
Yeah, they're awesome. But when you do that, what comes up is the stuff you've been avoiding. And so if you're not willing to pull up that weed and you're just trying to mow it over, then you're not going to actually address the problem. And a lot of people then will get anxious all over again, because the thing that triggered them is triggering them all over again if they're not willing to dive in. And it takes a lot of courage to be willing to go head first into your fear. You
Yeah.
have to go head first into the thing you're most scared of. Most people want to avoid that. So they will distract themselves with chemicals, including, food, including, all of the other chemicals we can think of, but also shopping, also video games, also drama,
Distractions, drama,
right?
gossip.
Talking, limerence, all of gambling, all of those are distraction, self-medicating techniques to take yourself away, to take you away from facing what wants to be faced. And
Yeah.
once you face and heal that, and part of the trick about it, part of the spell, kind of like in Harry Potter, the boggart, it's the fear that is the thing that keeps you from it. And once you face it, it disappears.
Yeah.
But once you face it, it feels, until you face it and actually go into it, it feels like it is unsolvable. It feels like it's not, why even bother facing it? Because it is too big to deal with. And actually, Some people need, a support system or a safe therapist to walk them through this. Not all therapists are safe people, so make sure you get a safe therapist if you
Exactly.
need one.
Yeah.
But sometimes people need a therapist to help them through this, a trauma-informed therapist. But a lot of people can do this on their own or do this with support. So they should, know what is right for them in proceeding this. But when you go into that and face it, you would be surprised at how quickly it dissolves. You would be surprised, and it's uncomfortable. It
Of
hurts.
course.
It's not fun, but it's like lancing that boil. It hurts, yeah, or like getting the sliver with the needle. You don't want to do that. It hurts, but actually it hurts less. It hurts less, faster. And it
Exactly.
only has to be a few minutes before you're feeling a lot better. And
Better.
it really only has to be a few minutes until you deal with this. You're not going to be given more than you can handle, in my opinion, but also, you should talk to a therapist if you need that help as you go through it. But
Right.
um, it will bring up pieces at a time, like the onion. So you'll deal with it, you'll have your catharsis, you'll
Exactly.
process it, and then you'll feel a lot better. And you'll go about your day. And then, 2 days later, the same thing will happen, but it will be a new piece of shame or trauma. Just like me and the slug, I do so much shame shadow work and trauma around that. And I
Exactly.
still had this bit of shame that I wasn't aware of. So it's a new pocket of shame I needed to address and face and still work at cleaning out. But um it's an ongoing journey, and at the same time you can have so much relief so fast. And I think a lot of people don't realize that, because the spell of it is to make you feel like it's not even worth trying because it's so insurmountable. And actually it's just taking one step at a time. It's just one,
Exactly.
and it's a
It is.
huge relief to do it.
It
Yeah.
is.
So as far as, and the thing about narcissistic personality disorder and people who are severe narcissists, they don't want to face their shame. They would rather split their identity into a perfect part and an evil part. And they wear the perfect part. They're aware of the evil part. They know it's there. They're afraid people will find out that the perfect part is an act. But they have to find other people to project that on. And they need other people outside of them to be convinced of these roles. And if they can convince them, then they feel safe. What we need to do is recognize that we are all people with light and darkness in us, and there's
Absolutely.
no one who's perfect. And I also think by and large, there are two kinds of people who, there's a spectrum here, but by and large, there are people who clean their karmas as they go, which doesn't mean we're perfect people, but we're people who take accountability and clean up as we go. We take accountability. And when you know the real cost, you are less likely to charge that karma onto an imaginary, karmic credit card in the sky,
Exactly.
because you know how much that real cost is in real time. And so you're much more conscientious about your choices, and you take on less karma to begin with. But you pay for it when you do, with integrity, by taking full accountability, by saying sorry, by making amends when it's appropriate, by changing your behavior permanently to make
Yeah.
sure that you're the kind of person who doesn't cause that harm again. That's how you do it. And then
Yeah.
there are people who put it off. And I think that goes hand in hand with the narcissism thing, because, and not everyone who does this is a narcissist, because I've also done this before in wounded states where you kind of put your karma off a little bit more instead of addressing it. But it's all the wounding. The reason you do that in the first place is that you're a hurt person hurting people. It all
Yeah.
comes back to the trauma
Yeah.
and making other people's problem, either projecting it onto them or not recognizing the harm we're causing in being blind to our own woundedness and bleeding all over everyone else, which again is why it's so important, why I'm so passionate about healing trauma, because that makes people
Absolutely.
safe. It's what makes people safe. So recognizing these patterns within the simulation and recognizing that these narcissistic behaviors are things anyone and everyone can and has done. And when we're in systems, when we're in workplace environments,
Yeah.
we don't realize that this is a form of bullying and hazing this employee. And kind, empathetic people can actually jump on board with that kind of behavior because they're not paying attention, and they think, if the system tells me this is the right thing to do, then I do it. Not recognizing that the system is actually a narcissistic system, and you're causing permanent damage to them, and you are still karmically responsible for that, because you have to stand up to the system and say no when it's wrong. Otherwise, you are giving your power as a divine sovereign being, because that's the thing too, is we don't recognize our power and our divinity. We don't recognize our divinity. We don't recognize how much power we give away. And that's why these structures are narcissistic, because they're parasitic and
Right.
they're trying to take our power, our divinity, to
Oh.
usurp it to them instead of
Mm-hmm.
embodying it and using it ourselves. And so when we misuse it by going along and saying, oh, I guess it's okay, that's how soldiers
And
in
it's
Germany
not
ended up
okay.
horrific things, you just
Right.
following orders. And we need to stop and analyze what we do and why we're doing it and who is influencing
And
us to
who
do
it's
it and why.
hurting.
Yeah,
And we
because there
have
are
to,
people who pay real prices for it.
yeah, wherever people think that they get their orders from or message, yeah, if it's hurting somebody, if you are
Hmm.
hurting somebody or attacking somebody, and we look the other way and we're like, oh, okay, no, it's wrong.
Hmm.
And that's where we have to step up and everybody should, instead of looking the other way or allowing it,
Hmm.
because it is projection or whatever fear that person has or that wounding, we have to nip it. And that's where
Hmm.
boundaries come in. And that's where we stand firm. Like
Hmm.
that was not okay.
Yeah.
And us saying that is not, no means no,
Yeah.
right? This is my boundary. No means no. That is not okay.
Hmm.
And then if that person can't respect that, then the next step comes in. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
we have boundaries here.
Yeah.
This is, yeah, yeah. And
And
there's work that, oh, go
that's a
ahead,
good
Angie.
test. I was going to say no means no. And that means no on small things. If they will violate you on small things, they do not respect your sovereignty. They do not respect your humanity. And they feel that they are entitled to take anything and everything from you. It is a litmus test, but it is a symptom of the bigger problem. If they're
Yeah.
willing to do it on a small thing, then they will do it on a big
On a
thing.
big
So
thing.
it's exactly.
And
It's
that's
the
why,
same
yeah,
pathology. Yeah.
exactly. And that's why I feel like we've talked about and going back to the beginning, talking about forgiveness. We can forgive somebody energetically or from afar. But once again, having those boundaries or doing what we need to do also is a form of their own, I feel like awakening, healing, boundaries. It's for people to learn, hopefully on their own time. But yeah, if we do not speak up in our own sovereignty, right? Speak up and say, that's not okay with me. And we
Mhm.
just look the other way or allow it, then it's going to get out of hand. And I feel like that's what has happened. So each one of us needs to be able to stand in our power with love and
Mhm.
respect and know it's okay. We're talking about shame now, too.
Mhm.
Know it's okay to set those boundaries without shame and guilt.
Yeah. Which comes from knowing our worthiness
Exactly.
and honoring our anger when it comes up, because that is part of the healing process. And we need to make sure that, one of the most powerful ways the matrix keeps us in bondage is by shaming anger, because anger is what breaks open our awareness of our boundaries and our impetus to protect ourselves and to elevate to a higher level, to alchemize it. Fire is purifying, anger is fire. So when you stay stuck, you repress that, and that kind of invisible electric fence that they have put there in anger. And abusers will do this too. They will shame you for being angry, but you can be angry, and some people need to learn skills, but you need to learn how to be angry safely. You can be angry without hurting people. You
Exactly.
can be angry without being violent. You can be angry without saying hurtful, harmful things. You
If
can
it,
speak your truth directly and plainly. And sometimes that is hurtful for people to recognize in their ego, but it's not the same as saying something attacking. Not saying you are blah, 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 blah is not the same as saying, when you did this, I felt this and this and this and this. And I feel
absolutely.
very violated as a person. And if this doesn't change, we need to redraw the terms of our relationship. And that could really hurt their feelings, but it's still an appropriate thing to say without actually attacking or being abusive in return. And there's a
Yeah.
big difference. And talking about this is so important because we spread awareness of what these skills are and what people need to learn so that they can sift through this. And some people just need to learn better skills, and some people are willfully abusing and playing dumb so that they can keep being abusive. And that's why we need to recognize the difference, because that is narcissistic abuse. Narcissistic abuse inherently does not want to change. It
Yeah.
is resistant to change. It is resistant to facing its shame. It's resistant to facing its shadow. And so people who are willing to take accountability and fix things are
Accountability. Exactly.
right. Right.
That's where
We
it comes
don't
from.
absolve people of taking responsibility for their things when we forgive them, but everyone needs to take responsibility for it. So they recognize, one, that it's not okay, and they recognize the cost, but two, they recognize their divine power, because For every cause, there is an effect. And when you put a cause into motion and do not receive its effect, you feel powerless. And so that's when you want to go out and do more. And that's when people get in these cycles of control and controlling other people. And then they put the consequences off by enabling themselves or putting it, in karmic debt. And they think that that's what they want, but it actually makes them feel more powerless in not getting a consequence for their behavior.
Yeah.
Because it's toddler thinking. They want
Yeah.
consequences to feel safe and to feel the power and to feel the impact of what they do.
Yeah. Thank you, Angela. Wow. Thank you. So, I know we talked a little bit about this, so I want to shift just to something else. Can you explain to people, or what your opinion would, your observation with what's going on with the divine masculine, divine feminine? I know we have both in us, but as a female, right? As
Yes.
females versus like a man, can you give some knowledge on that, please, for people?
Absolutely. I'm still learning about this. I'm still a student. I'm still processing this. So I have hypotheses I'm working from based on what I've learned. But I think some of them are pretty sound. So one thing that's important to recognize is we are all masculine and feminine. And I I've told you before that I kind of think that I'm 55% little girl and 45% old man. And you kind of can't unsee it once you see it, because I'm just like a silly little girl who wants to play and be light. And then I'm also kind of a crotchety old man who does things, chops wood and carries water. So I'm kind of both. Um, and we are not in our wholeness as sovereign beings without the feminine force and the masculine force. Both are necessary. And one thing I channeled recently about that was it's like a skull and a skull and a skeleton, a skull and a brain. The
Okay.
brain is the receiver. The brain, and we talked earlier about being a receiver. The brain receives, the brain processes information. The brain takes this on, and the skull protects and contains it so that it can do its work in safety and sovereignty. All men and all women are going to function best with a brain and a skull because we are all both. So that's not saying that men don't have brains and women don't have skulls. No, we all have both because we're
Yeah,
all both. Our brain
exactly.
needs a skull to function properly, and a skull doesn't have purpose without the brain.
Yeah.
And so they are inherently interlinked in their wisdom in those properties. And we need to recognize that in ourselves. To be sovereign individuals, we need to recognize that we have the soft, empathetic, feeling, receiving, perceiving. And I actually had a talk with ChatGPT about this, what the divine feminine is. And ChatGPT said that the feminine receives the codes, and the masculine helps to build the codes the feminine receives. So
Wow.
one thing that the patriarchy has done to hijack that is that the patriarchy says, we receive the codes and we build the codes, and we're going to co-opt your labor in the ways we want to for our agenda. And that is really harmful because it's not showing the harmonious union of power that both have as equals, as equitable, necessary components. And so to really be a fully functioning, healthy individual, regardless of our gender identity or whether we're non-binary or whatever, because I believe that our differences are what make us necessary. We all blossom, we all bloom in our own unique divine, according to our own blueprint. And that was divinely encoded into us. And no two of us are the same, ever. None of us are the same. And we have to honor our differences, because it's our differences that bring all the codes to light. We all can bring a piece to the pie that no one else has, a piece to the puzzle that no one else has. And so if we repress that into conformity, like narcissism would have us do, so that we're perfect and we don't step out of line and we don't make a mistake,
I
and
know.
we have to blossom in our fullness. And so for people, that expresses in different ways. And that means every man and every woman. And it's easier to see this in non-binary people because they are a little bit more integrated often in both of them if they see themselves as, in that both. And, there are a spectrum of people in that too. But you're going to have, and I've told you this before, one thing I I have had a history of attracting a lot of men in their divine feminine energy, not divine feminine, their toxic feminine energy. Um, and they don't
Mhm.
recognize that the thing that they're attracted most to me about is that I'm such a masculine woman. And I like to, wear makeup, and I am also very feminine, and I have a lot of female presenting attributes, but I'm a very masculine woman in a lot of ways, and I love that about myself. When I'm directing, I am in my masculinity. I love and I love it. I love that feeling, but it's also not where I want to be all the time.
Yeah.
I want to be in my femininity. It's something I want to exercise and keep in shape. And also, I want to be predominantly in my femininity and my feminine energy. And so you're going to have different mixes of that. You're going to have women who, and so it's really important not to assign gender roles because we are all unique individuals. And that's also where oppression comes into it, where the patriarchy and some of those ideology tangents get dangerous because they weaponize and invert the divine feminine, divine masculine
Yeah.
um, dynamic to just be rebranded patriarchy. Just submit to me because I'm a divine masculine and I will
Yeah.
tell you everything you need to know and I will control everything about your life and I'll do it so benevolently. And that is
Hmm.
not what it's supposed to be. The divine
Yeah.
feminine has the codes. She's the one who gets the information. And a man with a balanced masculine and femininity, when he is in his divine femininity, not his toxic feminine, because we can all be toxic feminine and toxic
Yeah.
masculine,
Masculine.
and I've said this is one thing that I've written down in some pieces I haven't published yet, but we have all been both. If you have gossiped, if you have used information to hurt people's feelings, then you were in your toxic femininity, and everyone's done that. If you have used physical violence to hurt someone, then and everyone who is older than two has done that, right? We've all hit someone on the playground when we didn't know better. So it's important to recognize we are all both. There's toxic femininity and there's the light and dark side of both of them. And we are all capable of both. So it's important to recognize that gives us four quadrants there. There's, toxic femininity, divine femininity, toxic masculinity, divine masculinity.
Right.
And we need to process our shadow and our shame so that we're not in the toxic side of either of them, so that we transmute and through self-awareness and accountability, make sure we don't
Absolutely.
make that other people's problems or perpetuate more harm and sorrow in our own lives by doing that. But also exercising our divine, there are women who like to be auto mechanics, and that's considered masculine. And we also don't want to, part of how the Matrix has inverted it, because the patriarchy is narcissism. It is a hierarchical um, pyramid scheme that's built just like the other pyramid schemes of the Matrix, and it hurts everyone involved because we are all masculine and feminine. It teaches boys or masculine presenting people to shame and kill the femininity in them. And because as within, so without, then they shame and harm, or worse,
Lee.
the women outside of them, the ones who represent femininity to them outwards, because to them that is something that needs to be destroyed. That's something that's shameful. Don't hit,
Yeah,
don't
that's very sad. Yeah.
don't throw a ball like a girl, don't cry like a girl, don't do these things. And we all need to be healthy in all of those. We need men who know how to cry and process their feelings and show affection to one another and other people, and who are measured in their intuition and have exercised their femininity to be strong, so that they are whole and independent people who are not shaming their femininity. Because when you shut down that one side of them, then they shut it down in themselves out of fear and shame, which is, that's where they fracture themselves. And that's where you see the narcissism, because they fracture themselves. They have to present a perfect mask, which is a masculine mask. They can't be feminine because that is shameful. They have to project the shame of femininity onto other people who they can then
Yeah.
punish as the scapegoat. And so then they tear themselves up and tear up everyone else around them too. And they are so miserable because of it. And a lot of women fall into the trap. And the reason the patriarchy exists is because women uphold it, because women choose to so value the male gaze, to so value male attention, that they will sacrifice other women on the altar, even women who call themselves feminists and who are, outspoken in the mask that they wear to the world. I know several like raging liberal feminist, many of them even lesbian women who are out and proud about women's rights and how we have to, but they're talking about their own oppression. They're not talking about other women's oppression. Because
Yeah.
when push comes to shove, they will sacrifice another woman for the tiniest, ugliest crumb from man. They will throw other
Yeah.
women under the bus. And that's what it is. It is a sacrifice. You're sacrificing other women. So you're sacrificing the safety of all women in order to get nothing, just the snippet of fog, a moment of affirmation from a man because you
Yeah.
value that more than anything else, because you're
Mm-mm.
not whole in yourself.
Exactly.
And we wouldn't have these patriarchal structures existing if women did not choose to uphold them by being flying monkeys, by being, abusers and henchmen and doing their dirty work on their behalf. So that's why it's so important to recognize that we can all be part of the problem, and we have to have self-awareness to be part of the solution,
Solution.
because it's a hologram and it's a holograph, which means if you break it, you know, the splinter of it shows the entirety of the universe of the whole. As within, so without, as above, so below.
No.
In Laket Shalakin, we are all connected and we are all the same. And we are all hollow. That's why a cell looks just like a solar system. When you have a microscope, the further you go in, the more it looks like going out. It's
Yeah.
all an inversion and it's all the same thing. And so yeah, that's some of the stuff I'm working with the masculine and femininity, because we need to be sovereign, independent people. And then when we find someone who complements the
Right.
ways we want to, and another thing I've noticed that's interesting is that if you think about women, if you think about a mama bear, what is a mama bear? She is a protector. She is a provider.
Masculine.
She is a hunter. The
Yeah.
mama bear is the masculine in that dynamic. And even
Yeah.
if the children are male, she is the masculine and they are the feminine component.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we all need to be whole and balanced in ourselves as individuals so that we can stand on our own. And then we can come into harmonious union with someone who complements us in the ways that we want to be, slightly, and explore different sides of it. And that doesn't mean you're that way all the time either. You
No.
can wear different parts of it, and one person is more in their masculine on this and more in their feminine on this. And you have a
Yeah.
play with each other where you have a harmonious interaction. And
Yeah.
so that's what I think we're moving more into. But it all comes back to self-awareness and being willing to have the hard conversations so that we can be honest about what's going on and radically accept it, and then make a game plan to work with what we're dealing with, instead of just trying to bypass and ignore reality as it is when it isn't what we want it to be.
Right. And I think
Because
it goes for both sides. Like, so many people have shamed men to, and a lot of women are wounded. That's something that they have to address within themselves as
uh-huh.
well. Don't be like this, don't be like that. Just like the man, don't throw like a girl, don't cry. All of it. I feel like it's on both sides, absolutely. So we can come into balance
Mhm.
because we embody both.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's awesome.
totally.
So, Angela, um, can you share your information with people, your YouTube, if you have like your TikTok, anything you want to share with anybody?
Yeah, Angela Nibley, the name that's on the screen right there, is the name of my YouTube channel and my TikTok channel and my LinkedIn. And if people, when I work one-on-one with people, I vet them. One, because my time is valuable and so is theirs. And I want to make sure that I only work with people who are really in a place to want to make real movement, and not just spend money and have someone tell them what they want to hear or spin their wheels. So I only work with people who are really ready to get honest about what they're dealing with so we can make a real actionable game plan to move forward with it. And I use my narrative consulting as a format to do that, because as a director, as a writer, as a script writer, I recognize, and also a student of spirituality, I recognized that story structures that are well written, stories that are well told, are what are resonating with audiences because they follow formulas. Anyone can write a bad story that doesn't follow these formulas, but they don't resonate with audiences. The ones that endure, you know, the Star Wars, the Cinderellas, these kinds of archetypal narratives feel like truth. They resonate as truth. We feel the truth of them. And that's because they follow universal law, which in my mind's eye, every time I say it, I have this like, in my mind's eye, I have this vision of the golden spiral of the divine ratio, because that's that's the pattern that
Right.
unfolds. And so when we recognize that, we can recognize our own life story, but you have to be honest for this to work. What I do is I help people recognize what it is that the story that they're living in their life, so that we can do script doctoring and figure out
I
how
love it.
to make the changes, taking responsibility, so that you get an outcome. Because also contrast is setting you up for success. The things that you, and Abraham Hicks talks about this brilliantly with the rocket of desire, but when you have a launching point, it's like a slingshot. So when something horrible happens to you, you actually have never been closer to the opposite, which is your dream. It is a launching point that launches you 180 degrees. And this is true of script writing too. The inciting incident takes you 180 degrees from where you want to be. And it takes you to the climax of the end of the story, which is where you find the resolution of it. And that's the opposite of the story unfolding. So we look at your story and what's going on and piece it together and see what you can do differently. What power, because we don't have power over everything. We can't control everything, but
Right.
there
Yeah.
are things we can control, and that changes with time. Some things we can control now that we couldn't control a year ago that we can't control in 5 years. So we need to be honest. And part of it is being really honest too about where your own flaws have been. Because if you're not honest about that, then your story is not going to be authentic, and you're not going to be owning your power.
Exactly.
So I make sure that I work with people who are really ready for that only, because otherwise they're going to be unsatisfied, and so will I.
Yeah. It's so
I
thank
want to
you,
make it a
Angela.
climactic experience for everyone.
Well,
So-
yeah. Yeah, of course. Oh, thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Molly. I love you so much. I
I
love spending
love
time
you
with
too.
you.
I do too. We've spent before we even started recording, we were hanging out for a long time.
We talked
That's,
for like 2 hours before
I
we even
know.
started
It
recording.
was awesome. I know. I'm like, should we do the podcast now?
Yeah.
Oh, I love you too so much. Absolutely.
Thank you for
So
having me.
you're welcome. You're welcome. You'll come back on again.
I'd love to.
Of course. Yes, ma'am. You're doing it. I love it. All right. Thank you guys so much for joining me and Angela. We are sending you so much love, and we pray that you are always surrounded by the Most High God's love, protection, and blessings. Bye, guys. Bye, Angela. I love
Bye.
you.
Thank you.
With faith, you've never failed, not once before. Why would you now, my Lord? So I lay it all in open hands and follow where you stand. You're the breath inside my chest. I'll trust you with the rest. I walk with faith, not with fear. Every step I know you're near. I walk with faith.